everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, as always, just along for the ride.
And before we get into the card that we're going to talk about today, I just wanted to let the viewers know that certain cards make sense to really only talk about them within certain deck types. And so we kind of learned our lesson when we talk about heroes from maybe Thranduil the Fair, who is vital to getting an Outlands deck up. Thranduil doesn't make sense to run in very many other decks. He's just really kind of specifically designed for an Outlands deck. So today, I guess we're going to talk about a hero that kind of specifically fits into the Silvan archetype, because we're talking about Slippery Silvan Deck. So Grant, which hero are we talking about?
We're talking about the leadership hero from the Fire in the Night. Now, as of recording this, he is en route to most people, or has been released, and people have already bought him. It's Thranduil.
Mm-hmm.
The 9 cost, 1 willpower, 1 attack power, 3 defense point, 4 hit point hero. He has the Sylvan and Noble trait and has a nice little combat action. Play a Sylvan ally from your hand. You do not need a resource match for this ally. Limit 1 per round.
Right.
So, David, what are your thoughts on Thranduil?
So, I think I've said this about a couple of cards that came out in the most, like you said, as we're recording this, the latest adventure pack, that it was the card that I didn't know that I needed for this deck, but as soon as I got it, made a lot of sense. But I'm not sure that you absolutely need Thranduil for this type of deck. His ability is phenomenal, and if you can get resource acceleration like a Steward of Gondor, which happens to be in this deck, or if you're doing a Lorien, which is kind of cost reduction but resource generation or acceleration in another way, or even the Sword Thane, if you're Sword Thaning somebody, that Thranduil allows you to play somebody during the combat phase, and kind of the best ally to bring out is like the Greenwood Archer, because it readies a hero. And because it's a combat action, I mean, now that the rules reference is published and, combat actions and actions have been clarified all over the place, you can bring out a Greenwood Archer after the enemy attacked for the 3rd time or whatever. Let me keep it easy. So you have 2 enemies engage with you. You let the first enemy attack Thranduil. Thranduil can defend because he's the one with the highest defense. Galadriel is not going to do anything. Attack or defend. And then Celeborn is a decent defender, decent attacker. But Thranduil is the one that you want to defend, because he's got 4 hit points and 3 defense. And so then you can use his combat ability and bring out the Greenwood Archer and then ready Thranduil, and Thranduil can then attack again. And then if you have Elven King on Thranduil, because maybe you need the defense as opposed to on Celeborn, where you may need the attack or the willpower, you can defend 2 or 3 enemies super straightforwardly with Thranduil without even trying. But I think outside of the deck, he's maybe a little more useful than Celeborn, because you may be running Sylvans, but I think that he doesn't necessarily have a stat line that makes him utilitarian. Leadership Denethor maybe makes a better. I know that Leadership Denethor, I think, has 3 hit points and not 4, but other than that, I mean, the stat line makes him virtually the same. And then Leadership Denethor may have a little bit better ability, or maybe more useful. But if you have a couple of Sylvans in your hand, or a couple of Sylvans in your deck, Thranduil's not a bad option. It's not necessarily, again, the go-to hero. And yeah, you do have to bring Sylvans out. But the fact that you can bring them out with any resources, it doesn't have to have a resource match, that makes it even better. So that's how you get into being able to bring out the Galadon Archer in this particular deck, how you're able to bring out Legolas in this particular deck. So, you're able to do all sorts of neat things with Thranduil. What is your thoughts of Thranduil?
I like Thranduil. As you said, his ability to pull that ally into play that doesn't require a resource match in the combat phase is ideal. I mean, I'd rate it as highly as Hiagon's ability from the tactics sphere, but his is restricted to questing successfully.
I think you have to bring out a Sylvan ally, right?
Yes, you do.
Right. So, it's a little more restricted than Hiagon's ability. But
Hiagon allows you to pull out a tactics ally.
Right.
It's just slightly changed from tactics to Sylvan.
Right.
But there is a further restriction on Hiagon, is you've got to quest successfully to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, you just have to have the resources to pay for it.
Right.
Now, a quick rules question here, David. Do you have to pay for the Sylvan from Thranduil's resource pool,
No.
or is it just any of the heroes' resources?
Because you don't need the resource match. It can come from any of your heroes. So you can.
Right, okay, I've been playing it right then. That's just a quick question I had, because I wasn't sure if I could spend resources from all my heroes.
Right. So you don't have to put the Steward of Gondor on Thranduil in order to pull out those guys. You can put them on wherever you want.
Okay, that's fair enough. I've been playing it right then.
Yeah.
I've got nothing really more to say about him. I mean, he would be an ideal candidate for the Cloak of Lorien, for that extra added defense that puts him to 4 defense.
Mm-hmm.
When not at a forest location, 5 defense when you are. Maybe something to look into if you're traveling through the forests. But ideally, if you're running Sylvans, you want to be running Thranduil for that effect.
Yeah, and I think that he makes sense in any type of Sylvan deck.
Yes.
And I don't think it matters if it's the Sylvans in and out, although he does accelerate that part of the game as well, versus just like the Rossiel sort of deck or just a general Sylvan deck.
Yeah. So
did you notice? No, not ring.
Yeah, I noticed that Magali.
Right. We're still. I don't think Magali has worked for Fantasy Flight or has been contracted by Fantasy Flight for a couple of years. So Thranduil must have been a hero that they have been wanting to bring out for a long time, or maybe this was a different card and then they thought Thranduil. I don't know exactly how that works. Maybe when we get Caleb back on the show, we can talk to him about Thranduil.
It's a possibility.
But again, it's like you're playing the Magali deck when you're playing this Slippery Silvan deck, slipping these guys back in and out of play all the time.
Yeah. But I also like his flavor text. It's a crime to wander in my realm without leave. From the Hobbit.
Right.
And that actually goes to feed his ability. You've entered his realm, now he's going to have some Sylvans chase after you.
Right. And I found that, and then even though I said earlier that Elven King may be a target for him, I found that Elven King in this particular deck is not necessarily the best to go on Thranduil, because you have a lot of ways to deal with attacking. You can chump block, you can use Feign Voices and things like that. A lot of times I'm going to use Elven King on Celeborn because his stats are more well-rounded.
I haven't got anything else to say about him.
Well, then should we ring this guy?
Yeah, let's ring his neck.
Let's ring his neck, right? If we can get to him. He's pretty quick with a bow. Nonetheless. Yeah. So I think, just so the audience knows, Grant and I, when we talked about doing these deck reviews or creating a deck and talking about them, we wanted to give the card kind of its just ring rating two ways, within against the whole card pool like we normally do, but also within the deck, because again, like we said in the intro, that some cards don't make sense except in certain decks. Now I'm not sure where this falls or where Grant feels this falls, but Grant, where would you ring Thranduil?
Out the entire card pool, I'd ring him an 8. He could
The
go
same as Celeborn.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly it. Both of my ratings are the same as Celeborn, 8 and 1.
Okay.
Because of the fact that inside a Silvan deck, any Silvan deck, he's going to be brilliant. Because of that, basically, ability to pull out allies in the combat phase to help you take down, well, pull out an ally to help you take down an enemy or to help you defend an enemy. It doesn't matter. It's there. It's able to do what it needs to do. I rate him an 8 because that's 3 defense. If you want a cheap defender, other than Denethor, is quite nice. The 7 overall strength needed to kill in one shot is quite hard to come by.
Right. Enemies don't typically come at you with 7 unless it's the boss enemy.
Exactly. And generally then you'd have Feigned Voices or something ready if you're running Thranduil.
Right. Yeah, I agree with your reasoning. I'm gonna change your change the ratings a little bit, but I'm gonna agree with the 8. I think that he can find some play in other decks. He's not super niche. He's not like Celeborn. I think maybe he's a little better than Celeborn, but not enough for me to go down to a 7, I guess. Yeah. And scientifically, I don't know really what the difference between an 8 and a 7 is in terms of rings. I just have a feel for these sorts of things. It's our highly scientific yet arbitrary system here. But I think within the deck, I think that you could make a swap out for Thranduil with another hero and still be almost as effective. Not with Celeborn. I think Celeborn's ability there, coupled with Galadriel, really makes the deck sing. And I think that you could run Haldir in this deck and be mainly okay, because there's ways to pull things out and put them into play with tree people and things like that don't necessarily have to happen during the combat phase with Thranduil's ability. So I think Thranduil in this deck is probably going to be a 2 and not a 1, because I think you could replay him and still get some, or you could replace him and still get almost the same replayability in the deck. But that consistency is what you really want. You want to be able to always pull somebody out in the combat phase, and you want to be able to plan for it. Feigned Voices is only just a one-time deal. Tree People is a one-time deal. So I think that's where I come up with my ratings.
Yeah, I agree with what you've said, that in certain situations that he is the one that's least likely, who's more likely to get replaced. But in the deck that we've built, I think he's key part of that defensive structure. Changing them for Haldir would leave you vulnerable in the areas of defense.
Yeah, you're right. And that's but I think that you can chump with this sort of deck. You don't have to.
Can.
So because because you can not only bring them out, but you can also then pull them out of the discard pile and things like that. So, but I think you're right. What you said is he's the one that is. If you're not going to replace Galadriel, you're not going to replace Celeborn. Those two pair together really nicely, and they do really awesomely. If you're going to pick one, you're going to pick Thranduil, and you're going to choose a different lore
different leadership or a different hero.
You're going to pick a different hero, probably from the lore sphere, to have consistent access to lore.
I think that would be accurate. Also, I think Denethor from the leadership sphere would be a good choice because of that extra 2 resources at the beginning.
Right.
But again, that's just niche situations because we're not actually going to switch them out. It's still the deck.
Yeah, and I mean, a 2 is still a knockout rating, like with your 1 and my 2, like there's no way we're not going to run Thranduil, but you can see that if you're going to replace, you're not going to replace the other 2. You could replace Thranduil to do whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So join us next time as we talk about more cards from the game. Have a great day. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed cardtalk2018.libsyn.org for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.